Romans 11 to 10 commentary. Romans 11 verse 1 to 10 continues Paul's discussion about Israel's place in God's redemptive plan. After describing Israel's widespread rejection of the righteousness revealed in Christ, Paul now addresses an important question. Has God completely rejected his covenant people? His answer is immediate and emphatic. God forbid. Paul demonstrates that God's promises had not failed, for there remained a faithful remnant chosen according to grace, while the rest experienced the judicial hardening foretold in the Scriptures. Verses 1 to 2. God has not cast away his people. Open quote. I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. Close quote. Paul begins by answering a question that naturally arises from his previous argument. If many Israelites rejected Christ, did that mean God had abandoned Israel altogether? Paul rejects such an idea immediately. As evidence, he points to himself. He was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, yet he had believed in Christ. His own conversion demonstrated that God was still saving Jews. Paul reminds his readers that God had not cast away his people which he foreknew. This refers to God's covenant purpose concerning Israel. Throughout Israel's history, God preserved those who believed his promises, even when the nation as a whole wandered into unbelief. Verses 2 to 4. Elijah and the faithful remnant. Paul recalls the account of Elijah, who believed he alone remained faithful after Israel had embraced idolatry. Yet God revealed that he had preserved 7,000 men who had not bowed to Baal. This historical example illustrates an important principle. God's work has never depended upon the majority. Even during periods of widespread unbelief, he preserved a remnant who trusted him. Paul uses Elijah's experience to explain what was happening in his own generation. Although the nation largely rejected Jesus as the Messiah, God was continuing to save believing Jews according to his promise. Verses 5 to 6, a remnant, according to grace. Paul writes, open quote, even so then, at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Close quote. The believing remnant existed because of God's grace rather than human achievement. Their standing before God did not arise from obedience to the law of Moses, national identity, or personal merit. Paul emphasizes that grace and works cannot function together as the basis of justification. If salvation depends upon grace, then it cannot be earned through works. Likewise, if it depended upon works, it would no longer be grace. This statement reinforces Paul's teaching throughout Romans that righteousness comes entirely through God's gracious provision in Christ rather than through human effort. Verse 7, Israel's division. Paul summarizes Israel's condition. Open quote. Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. Close quote. The nation sought righteousness, but many pursued it through the law instead of through faith in Christ. Consequently, only the elect, the believing remnant, obtained the righteousness God freely gives. The hardening described here was not arbitrary, but judicial. Those who continually resisted God's revelation became increasingly hardened, fulfilling what the prophets had foretold. Verses 8 to 10, the fulfillment of the prophets. Paul combines passages from Isaiah, Deuteronomy, and Psalm 69 to explain Israel's condition. The spirit of slumber, blinded eyes, and deaf ears describe a people who continually resisted God's truth until judgment came upon them. David's words concerning the table becoming a snare portray blessings turning into judgment. The very covenant privileges Israel possessed became occasions for stumbling because many trusted in those privileges rather than in the Messiah to whom they pointed. These prophetic quotations show that Israel's hardening was neither unexpected nor outside God's sovereign purpose. The prophets had long warned that covenant unfaithfulness would eventually bring judgment. The historical setting. Paul wrote Romans during a unique period in redemptive history. The Old Covenant order was drawing to its appointed end, while the New Covenant established by Christ was being fully manifested. During this transitional generation, the gospel went first to the Jew and then to the Gentile. Israel's hardening was connected to this covenant transition. Those who rejected the Messiah remained under the Old Covenant system that was approaching its conclusion, while those who believed entered the blessings of the New Covenant established through Christ's finished work. The judgments that came upon unbelieving Israel vindicated the words of Jesus and his apostles concerning that generation and demonstrated the passing away of the former covenant administration. Grace and God's faithfulness. Romans 11, 1-10 magnifies God's faithfulness rather than human performance. Although many rejected the Messiah, God preserved a believing remnant exactly as he had done throughout Israel's history. The passage also highlights that salvation has always rested upon God's grace. Neither ancestry, religious privilege, nor works of the law could secure righteousness. God's saving purpose was accomplished through Christ, and those who believed him became the true recipients of the covenant promises. Paul's argument assures believers that God's promises never fail. His purposes unfold exactly as he declared through the law, the prophets, and ultimately through his Son. The preservation of the remnant demonstrates both God's mercy and his unwavering commitment to fulfill every promise he has made.